Hello and welcome to the Addicts podcast. I'm your host, Jamar. Today's episode 102, and we're going to be interviewing Samuel M. How you doing, Sam?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited to hear this. So today's episode is from a different perspective. Sam is the ex-spouse of an addict, and we're just going to discuss his life as he dealt with the addiction of a loved one. So my first question to you is, I guess, tell us how you and your ex-wife first met.
We met 10 years ago. I was graduating high school, and she was my ex's cousin. That was initially how we met. And, but whenever we separated, I hit her up on Facebook about, 6 years later, because at the time, she was only 13 and I was only 15. And then a couple of years went by, and then whenever I got divorced, I hit her up again. And at this point, she was in her 20s, and we were just talking, and that was how we met later. But I've known her for quite a while. I've known her family for quite a while.
How long have you known her family?
About a good 10 years.
Okay. So were you guys friends before how close of friends were you? Because I know you said it was your cousin's girl.
Well, at the time, I was graduating high school and she was still a little kid. We wasn't that close. I saw her a couple of times, but whenever I met her again, she was full grown. I was at the end of my second divorce. So she was an adult at that point.
So she was your third wife?
Yes.
How were your first two marriages?
First one was okay, but it just wasn't right. You get married and then stuff changes that you're not ready for. I was very young. And then my second one, it was just a bad deal. And we were divorced within 60 days. But I was married to Samantha, my third wife, for almost 6 years.
Okay. So just actually backtracking a little bit, just to see if there's anything that led up to you and being part of addiction and staying with it. Did you have any addiction in your family growing up? How was your life growing up?
Well, my mom was a pretty bad addict herself, and she wasn't around for a good period of my life. So I had that exposure. Pretty good question, actually.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that relationship.
I didn't.
You and your mom.
It's been hit and miss because she'll go through periods where she's in my life, and then she'll go through periods where she's not. And it's just always been like that ever since I was about 8 years old. So.
What does she go out on binges and stuff?
Oh yeah, definitely. She'd go out on binges.
How long would she be gone for at a time?
Years.
Okay. That must have been hard on you.
I mean, whenever you don't know what a new bike is, you don't notice if you don't have one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was 8, and I barely saw my mom in the beginning. I don't remember really seeing her, but then eventually years later, we would see her once a week. I still remember, so every Wednesday night she'd take us to the mall or something, get something to eat. But yeah. So how did your mother, I know you said if you don't have a bike, you don't miss it, but how did it make you feel? Like, were you upset? Like, why does mom do this? She doesn't love me enough to quit. Like, what was going through your head?
My dad held it down pretty good. I guess it really wasn't something I thought about too much, because I was always active in sports, and that's how I kept my mind out of it. I mean, I just didn't know that she was gone because I was busy with sports. My dad was doing a good job, so I didn't even notice.
Was your dad around a lot?
Oh yeah, he was the best man at 2 of my 3 weddings.
Oh, that's awesome. I always wish I had that. I don't have any type of relationship with my father.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it is what it is. You know, for me, it's just I get nothing but anxiety and worry and all types of things when I talk with him. He just instills that in me, so I can't talk with someone that does that to me.
Yeah, that'll come into play later whenever we talk about my ex-wife, because that's exactly what I'm dealing with.
So so how was it, like, say the first year you got married with your wife? 'Cause I know you said you ended up being with her for 6.
Okay, so what words am I allowed to use to describe this? Is it like a PG or?
No, we are not PG.
All right, so in the very beginning, there was a lot of signs, but whenever you have a lot of really good sex, it can cover up a lot of holes in the relationship, and that's what it was.
Absolutely. That is exactly what I went through. My ex, I was codependent on her. She was abusive towards me, but the sex was amazing. It
Yes,
sounds stupid, but that is something, like you said, that it could hide a lot of emotions. You could take a lot of shit as long as you're getting sex.
yeah, and it wasn't basis, it was anger sex, throwing each other around. And it was like, man, this shit is not normal. But whenever you stay up all night fighting, because I was holding a full-time job and all I wanted to do was get 4 hours of sleep. And she would just stay up with me with all her emotions, and it drove me fucking crazy. But the first year, it was very rough because she was telling me she was working, but she never was, and her paychecks were never there. And then looking back on it, I was like, yeah, that was a sign. There was always a problem with her paycheck. She was always needing money from me. And at that point, the sex was so good, I was just giving her money to whatever she needed just so we could stay in our house. But looking back, she didn't have a paycheck for almost 2 years, which was a sign that I overlooked. And then you realize, looking back, I was stupid.
Yeah, I know. Later on, when you finally have a clear head, or you get out of, for you, you just get out of the relationship and start seeing straight again.
Yeah.
You recognize a lot of the signs and you say to yourself, like, well, to you, you weren't blind, you just ignored them.
Right.
So do you know anything about your ex-wife's childhood? How was it like for her growing up? Do you know?
Yes. She grew up around meth heads. Her dad was a meth head. And I use that word just because it is not sugarcoated. It is 100% truth. Her dad, her brothers, all of her family, her mom, her aunt, and at the time, I knew they had issues, but I didn't know it was that kind of family, or else I would have steered clear of it. But all of her family, all of her brothers and sisters, her mom and dad, her aunts, her uncles.
So they were all meth heads.
They were all meth heads. And I never done drugs in my life. Even weed, I don't even like the smell of it. So that's the picture that I'm painting, that I never done it. And this was a whole experience for me. I wasn't ready for it, and I didn't ask for it.
So let me ask you this question. Do you think that your mother's addiction had anything to do with you looking or being with a girl that was an addict?
It is something I have thought heavily about, because whenever we first met, I had no idea. She painted this picture. She was working, she was going to school, and it was just everything I wanted, because I told her in the very beginning, I was like, I don't mess with that. I'm not about that life. you know, I work 2 jobs, I make pretty good money. I don't mess with that. And she never gave me any signs in the, you know, introductory phase of a relationship that she was that kind of person. I found out the hard way, and we'll get to that as the interview progresses about how I found out she was a meth head.
So that was your ex's drug of choice was meth, just like her family.
As we get through the interview, I'll tell you about how I found out it was more than meth, but it was a ball of rubber bands of lies I figured out. But as far as I know, she was also a cocaine. I found that out through a failed UA that she had that in her system too.
So life was good. She painted the picture. When did the truth come out?
Whenever she was pregnant and I didn't know. And we found out she was 36 weeks pregnant, and I had no idea. She didn't tell me. Our son was born with it in his system. That's how I found out.
What do you mean born in the system?
He had meth in his system when he was born. And
okay.
that was how I found out the hard way about my wife. So this is where it really took off, was 3 weeks, you know, basically in the span of a month, I found out she was pregnant. I found out we were having a little boy, and I'll turn on my FaceTime and you can see him. I'm sorry, not FaceTime. I'll put the camera on him and you can see him. But anyways, he was born with it in his system. DHS gets in our life. And that's when I find out she's putting on a show to find out what she really is. And that was a full-blown meth head. And we had to go through the DHS system to get our son back. And our son has issues now that are tied directly to him having issues born within the system. And that's how I found out my wife was hiding a meth addiction.
So when that all came to light, was she denying it? What was she doing?
At first, she was denying it. She said the meth got in her system accidentally because she drank it out of a bottle. Then she stuck with that story. And then it came out, you know, she finally admitted to me that she had a problem, the whole 9 yards. And then I was like, man, I really put 2 and 2 together here.
How long did it take her to admit it?
It took a good minute. It took about 6 weeks. Oh, what? It's in that black bag. Yeah.
I'm just gonna take a break real quick. We'll be right back, folks. All right, folks, we are back. So we were talking about the ex-wife. Took her about 6 weeks to get everything together. What was your guys' game plan once you did that? Once she admitted it, what happened after that?
We had DHS in our life. They were putting our son in the system, and I pretty much had to bury my feelings towards what was happening, my anger towards her, the embarrassment. I had to ignore it because we had DHS in our life now, and we had to put on a front that we were a family, everything was going to be great. And I had to say whatever, Sammy, get away from there. I had to act like I was behind her, even though I really wasn't, because I wanted my son back.
Hey, what are you doing?
Understood. So, was this any legal thing? I don't know what happens when you get caught with meth in your system during a pregnancy. So it's just the child services comes, right?
Yeah.
And what did she say she was going to do? How was she planning on helping you get better?
Well, she had to go to rehab after a certain point because she kept failing UAs, and that was the only route she had. And I had to navigate the system myself and go to parenting classes. I was constantly taking UAs, but once my attorney found out I was telling the truth that I wasn't an addict because I was constantly passing UAs, I was passing hair tests. They really put two and two together that I wasn't lying when I said I had no idea.
So what happened after that when they finally believed you?
She was in, I'll use exact names and I'll use exact locations. She went to what was it called? I can't think of the name of it. She was in a rehab facility, and where they take the children, where they can get rehab and still have their children. And I was approved to take my son basically whenever I wanted, after work, before work, keep him over weekends, and they made my life a lot easier. And so I'd get off work, I'd pick him up, I'd spend time with him, I'd keep him overnight, I'd drop him off before work. It really made my life a lot easier. And then I had my attorney, in my ear, was telling me, if you guys ever get divorced, you have an easier route to get him. And, this is a race, and it's going to be a contest of who can get him first. And I've always wanted my son. I wanted my son away from her, away from that lifestyle, because I love my son more than anything.
So were you guys still together? Because it says, your lawyer said that you could split. What did you want to do?
At that point, I felt embarrassed because I didn't know how many people actually believed me. I had no idea that she was a meth head. And I know because, I got a couple missing teeth. They paint this picture. Hey, I'm a meth head too. So that was a pretty easy picture for the people to paint about me. And I'm like, no, I've never done drugs in my life. But they were telling me you could get him if you wanted. But then again, I wasn't really ready to just divide everything. You go one way, you go another. Because they were in my ear, you could get him, and we could get him for you. But I didn't know. And looking back, that's really what I wish I would have done, is divorce her while I had an attorney on my side, just take him and just be done with her. That's what I wish I would have done. And we'll get to that later, where I can tell you where I really wish I would have done that.
So when she first went to rehab, how was she doing? Was she taking it seriously?
Oh yeah, she was like, whenever you're on meth, you lose a lot of weight. And she ballooned almost to 60 pounds over her weight whenever she got there. So I'm like, okay, she's taking this seriously. And I was told she's very interactive, doing interviews, going to her classes, very attentive with our son. So it really gave me comfort that, okay, stay with her and this will be okay.
And how long was she in rehab for?
She was only supposed to be there for 3 months, but she really said she needed more, and she ended up staying 9 months.
How did you feel about that?
I got my son whenever I wanted, and we're going the route of honesty. So I felt unburdened because she wasn't at the house anymore. I could work 2 jobs, get out of the financial hole she put us in, and I felt good. I didn't have her around to burden me with, hey, I need this money, I need this money. So I was getting the best of both worlds. I didn't have her, but I had my son.
So you stayed together. What happened when she got out of rehab? What happened 9 months later?
She got out of rehab and she came off as a changed woman. She got a job immediately. She started working. She started working hard. She started working overtime. She was a changed person. I was really impressed. I was like, okay, I made the right decision. She came back and we got DHS out of her life and everything was peachy.
So everything was peachy. That's good. When was the next issue?
With my son's issues, able to forget that the nightmare of DHS, the nightmare and embarrassment of losing my son. What was the beginning of the end? My son really started to struggle with words and development. And it wasn't just a little bit, he was really falling behind. And we took him to a specialist. And I had to deal with what had happened all over again. And I couldn't put it at the back of my mind. I couldn't act like it didn't happen anymore because my son had so many issues related to the meth and I had to deal with it every single day. And with the way my son was, he's always been a daddy's boy. He's always had to be around me. And it was just front and center, right in front of me every single day. So there was a good 2-year gap where I didn't have to deal with it. And then whenever he started going to school, because I always wanted him in school.
So when was the next problem?
Honesty, that's what we're doing here. Because I had to deal with this, I became very spiteful towards her, very angry towards her, and I became unlivable with her. Anything that she would do would piss me off. And I was constantly like, well, if you wouldn't have done this, our son would be just fine. And he could talk right. If you would have kept that needle out of your arm, he would be just fine. And I said a lot of things I wish I wouldn't have said. But whenever all this happened, I never got to deal with it. I just had to put on this face that I'm supporting my wife, blah, 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 blah. We want our kid back, blah, blah, blah. So I never dealt with the anger head on. I just put it away until it boiled up, until our son really started to fall behind. And that's whenever all the emotions, the anger, basically I created another person in my head specifically for dealing with Samantha that nobody else saw. It was just a spiteful husband towards her. I was a bad husband. I said a lot of things to her I wish I never said.
And once you said these things, what happened? Did you guys part ways?
Yes, she ended up having an affair whenever our relationship was just at the end. And she left and never came back for a couple days. And she took our son, and that was the only part I cared about. She left, great. You took my son, that ain't gonna work. And I get back to the house, and her little boyfriend is there in the car. Big mistake. Even though I didn't care about her, the fact that someone else was around my son, big mistake. And it really set off the second part of her addiction, which we will get into after you ask me questions about that.
Well, let's go there. Tell me more about the addiction.
I didn't think she had a problem. Now that she left, I was really hoping it wasn't what I thought it was. And then, because I dealt with her once, so I know her bullshit. She was constantly, because we were getting ready to get divorced. It was obvious. So I cashed out my 401k so we didn't have to split it in the divorce. I know it was a shady move, blah, blah, blah. I know. But I wasn't going to pay for her car anymore. I wasn't going to pay for her cell phone bill, the whole 9 yards. So I took $1,500 out of my 401k that I cashed out to, give her, like, okay, I'm giving you this money, but I'm not paying your car anymore. You're on your own. Because, this is what a divorce is. And she took that money. Everything was cool. And then it was never enough. And then she was constantly needing more money, more money, more money. And I kept giving it to her. And then one day I go over to where she's living at. She texted me the address to come pick my son up. And sure enough, it is right in the middle of Methville, USA. And I'm like, oh, she's fucking back on this shit again. And I stopped giving her money. She starts lashing out at me, a whole 9 yards, running her mouth. And like whenever there's a really good way I have of taking stuff, like if I don't respect you, your insults, it doesn't matter what you say to me. You can say whatever. It's not going to get a reaction out of me. And she was saying everything under the sun. You don't care about your son. You don't care about this. You don't care if I'm homeless. And because I don't respect her, I didn't give a shit what she was saying to me. It was going in one ear and out the other. Like I would sift through all the nasty text messages just to find, when are you picking your son up? When are you bringing him back? Because that was all I cared about. And then she got real spiteful towards me because she wasn't getting a reaction out of me.
So what did she do in spite?
Well, it's not what she did, it's what I did. She is a very material person. Very material. I am not. What I did, and then, because I didn't want to live in the house anymore. And it was a pretty big house. I didn't need all that room. And it felt like I was trapped in a ghost house. And all I could hear, all she was texting me about was all the TVs, the couches, this and that. And I was so mad that was all she cared about, not the fact that our family was just getting ready to be imploded. And me just hating her so much, I took a baseball bat to every big screen in the house, every vanity mirror. I just smashed the shit out of it. And I'm like, that's what you care about? That's what you care about? Not the fact that we're getting ready to get divorced. I smashed everything in the house just because I knew that's all she cared about. And it pissed me off because I don't, at some point I was hoping we could restore our marriage. But once it was clear it wasn't going to happen, and that's all she cared about, I smashed everything.
How did you feel when you were done smashing it?
Really good. Really good.
At what point did you regret doing that?
Never.
Never?
No.
So what happens after all this?
After a certain point, she hits me with the fake pregnancy. And the thing about that is, I got fixed 2 years ago and never told her. So I knew this was some bullshit. She hits me with this pregnancy thing, and me not telling her I got fixed 2 years ago. And it was more money, more money. That's all she was after. I need this for money. I need this for this baby. And I haven't told her yet. I'm probably going to tell her later today. And then I had Krista, which was her best friend, message me and goes, she's not pregnant, right? She's just going around telling everybody this to get money out of you. I'm like, I'm not stupid. This is how I know, because I got fixed and never told her. And so she's all about money. And, I make a decent amount of money, but I'm not a material person. I went from that, 4-bedroom house to an 800-foot square apartment. I went from paying $1,400 a month mortgage to $650. Granted, I could afford to stay there, but I choose not to.
Yeah, I'm a very simple man myself. I try to be.
Yeah,
Material things definitely are not everything. You learn that the hard way sometimes.
you learn that the very hard way. The bigger your house is, the more you try to fill it up, and that's not what's important to me. Is just having my kid in a bed. I'm good. But where it took a turn was her and Tyler didn't work out so well, because he was a 21-year-old boy, and I say boy because he's a little kid, and they were put on this show that they were so great and happy. Granted, Tyler was a meth head himself, so he wasn't capable of working. He's got a record. He doesn't have a license. And at some point, she figured out he wasn't going to provide the lifestyle that I allowed her to live based on, them being together. And they put on this Facebook front, him holding my son, whole 9 yards. And that's what pissed me off. I was like, don't hold my son and put it on Facebook, because I'll knock the fuck out of you, Tyler. And then at this point, I'd stayed, out of relationships. I had a friend with benefits here and then, just to keep me on the straight and narrow, not being in a relationship. And at this point, her being with Tyler, she still came over one time and had a one-night stand. And I'm like, you got to tell Tyler you're a cheater, because that's not really right. We had a one-night stand, whole 9 yards. She didn't want me leaving marks on her, so I knew she was trying to keep that on the down low. But and then their relationship fell apart, and I wasn't going to get back with her. And where I'm at now, I'm at my new girlfriend's house. We're just chilling, and then we'll get to that in a minute. But she was falling apart with him because they were living in a methed out trailer park, and she was starting to realize he's not going to provide anything except probably an STI, a pregnancy, and overdrafted bank accounts.
What happens after all this?
She went crazy whenever she saw I had a girlfriend. She would come to my house, and at this point, I accidentally left my car unlocked, and I went and got a TV, and I put it in the back of my car. And this bitch had gotten in the back of my car, took the TV while I still had my son, and she was trying to pawn it off at a pawn shop. And that's how it really got violent really quick. It got really violent to where it was dangerous. But
you were violent towards her?
She brought out, like I said, there is a part of me that only exists for her. Nobody else gets the anger that she does. Nobody gets the treatment she does, because I hate her. I hate her with every fabric of my being. But no, I never put my hands on her. My words were brutal. Not my prettiest moment, but it was getting bad, because she would always threaten me, and I'm like, go ahead, do it. Because at this point, her and Tyler had fallen off. I moved on. At this point, I'm living in my little 1-bedroom apartment. Everything's good. Everything's peachy, because I don't have you. And I was thinking when I moved to my apartment, I wouldn't have to deal with her. But she would start showing up at my apartment, you got this, I don't got none of that. You got everything in your apartment. You left me nothing. Not to mention, at this point, I was giving her money nonstop. It was the $1,500 I gave her out of my 401k, whenever, because I'm working 2 jobs at this point. Yeah, there should be some in the black grocery. For real? Son of a bitch. All right, give me a moment. And wait, what was the last thing I said?
I forget exactly. I got thrown off track also. So we were just talking about what had happened with the violence and things like that.
Yeah.
And you said it was verbal abuse mostly.
Oh yeah, most definitely. It was getting out of hand. She was all about. Oh yeah, it was all the money I was giving her. I gave her the.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the money.
I gave her the $1,500 first. That was where I really messed up. So once I gave her that money, she was okay. Well, now I need a new tire. Okay, $300. And okay, can you get my phone turned on? $150. And then it just never stopped. And I constantly kept giving it to her, basically just to shut her up, just to not hear the sound of her voice. And that was how bad I hated her. And I used that word. And even though it was like, you shouldn't say you hate her, I hated her. I can't even keep text messages in my phone because I hate seeing her number on my phone.
So at what point did you start to say you had enough of this? What was she doing this whole time? Was she at any point trying to get better, or she was just didn't care?
She was in denial. Even whenever anyone that has dealt with an addict directly, we know when they're changing. And the weight was the first thing. Remember, she ballooned whenever she got out of TWCC. So she was in the mid 220s, and all of a sudden she was down. Within 2 weeks, she was back to her pre meth weight, or what she would look like whenever she was on full blown meth. She was a skinny girl. And so that was the biggest time. Then the money was the next one. And then anytime I didn't give in to her, she would just start yelling the whole 9 yards. And I didn't love her, so I had no problem hanging up on her. Like, go ahead, throw your little fit. So she was on a downward spiral, just like she is right now.
So how long ago did this all happen? Like, when was the last time you communicated with her?
Yesterday, whenever she was asking me for money for her tire. And then this morning, she was asking me for money for her phone. I was getting ready to get shut off.
Do you give her money, or do you just pay the bills for her?
No, not anymore. And that was whenever she asked for money for her phone. I was like, all right, well, I'll call up Cricket directly and I'll pay it that way. And then she's like, well, if you call up there, it's gonna say this balance is this much, but give me the money. I'm not fucking stupid. I know what you're doing with that money.
So what are you doing to handle stuff nowadays? How are you going about everything? What's she doing?
She is still trying to act like she's pregnant. I'm gonna tell her later today that I got fixed 2 years ago. And she's giving me a guilt trip. That she don't have no money. But I take my kid from Friday to Sunday. And whenever I get off work, I'm gonna start doing this as soon as I get off work at noon. I go from work at 4 o'clock in the morning to noon, because she's never really kept him from me, which is, the good thing about her. She has no problem giving me my son. So I'm probably gonna take him as soon as I get off work, the time like 9 o'clock at night. So she really has no excuse why she's not working. But that's what I'm gonna do, is take my son as much as possible so he's not around her and whatever crew she's got with.
So what are your plans for the future? How do you intend on handling all this and moving on?
I want divorced from her as soon as possible. And I don't know if you even want me saying this. You can edit it out if you want. I wouldn't care if the streets took her. If we can get divorced and my son never has to see her again, that's fine with me. I don't care if the streets take her. I don't want her. I don't want my son around her.
Yeah, I mean, that's strong words, but I understand where you're coming from as far as being upset. I don't agree with what you're saying, but I'm saying I understand being that angry and feeling that. You know what I mean? I could
Yeah.
understand like that built up anger from the years and years of lying and cheating and stealing.
Yeah. And I know everyone's not going to agree with me, but after, dealing with her for so many years, I know I'm not supposed to say it, but it's the truth. I know you can add a couple cups of water to make it not sound so mean, but it's the truth. If I can get my son and not deal with her, that's fine with me.
So you're still in the process of the divorce.
Yeah, once she found out I had a girlfriend and we want to get married, she has really stalled this divorce.
Oh, it is what it is. Let me ask you one last question. Did you have any advice for people that might be dealing with the same issue as far as that goes?
Dealing with an addict is very difficult because people that have never done drugs, it's very hard because we try to make sense of what we're going through, make sense. But people on drugs don't play by normal rules. It's all about getting money to get the drugs. It's like a tornado. They don't care who they hurt, what relationships they destroy. It is very difficult to deal with an addict. And my advice, if you're ever in the situation I was, get out. It ends very badly.
Well, I guess that's where we're going to wrap up. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I appreciate the interview. I really do.
No, it's good to see from someone else's perspective. I'm, sorry that you went through all that. And unfortunately, it's just a sick person. You know what I mean? It's just, we all do the same stuff. I was lucky. I was a self-sufficient addict. So I didn't really have to ask for too much. I did every now and then, but yeah, I was pretty self-sufficient. So I'm sorry that you're going through all that.
I'm glad to hear that you're not an addict anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm 2 years clean, a little over that, and I'm going to keep battling that every day.
I'll be rooting for you.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that. It really means a lot. So for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below, give us a like. Also subscribe. You'll see when new videos are uploaded. You can check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Facebook. We're all over the place as far as social media goes. Also, check out our TikTok, which is something we just started about a month ago. So we're helping to grow that as well. So that's all I have for today. And until next time.